Hey, and good evening. I'd like to welcome people to our Planning and Zoning Commission workshop tonight for August the 8th. Before we get into some of our proposed agenda for the workshop, I do want to go over old business we may have on the plate. Philip, would you address anything as far as city council action since our last gathering?
Sure. Okay, so at our last gathering, we talked about the adding the corridor overlay to the Burkemont Avenue, US Highway 64, and the Lenore Road and Lenore Street and Avery Avenue. And because of it was mentioned, it was written in the code, but it was just not made evident in the maps. And so we took action to create an ordinance to amend the code and the map to reflect that. That was adopted at City Council. So those roads, Burkemont Avenue, Avery Avenue, Lenore Road, and Lenore Street, if you look at our GIS map, you now see those as in the corridor overlay district. And then we had the zoning ordinance amendment to deal with electronic gaming as permitted uses and how those are addressed. That was also adopted by City Council. And the final one was to exclude drive-through restaurants as a permitted use in the Central Business District. And that was also adopted by City Council.
Very well. Any questions or follow-up with Philip from the commission? Hearing none, we'll move on to appearances. This is an opportunity tonight for anybody that would be visiting with us that wants to bring up an item for planning or zoning concern to our commission. Seeing none, we're going to move into new business. And as I said earlier, this is a planning workshop, and we had previously asked the staff to, when we don't have action items on our agenda to attend to, that we use our time to basically host interested presenters that can inform us of activities that we may not be totally aware of in detail. So I'm going to turn it over to Philip.
Okay. So based on that and thinking about the items that were germane to the Planning Commission and what all we consider, which is if you go to our Mission 2030 plan, we talk about it, and I was making a presentation to City Council the other night, and in that presentation it talked about the Mission 2030 plan and how that is a economic development driven plan. It is an aesthetic driven plan to create a certain look, and it was affected by the zoning code. And so we look at different things that are occurring within the community that may have an effect that the Planning Commission may be dealing with at some point in the future. I could think of no more significant project presently going on and probably in the foreseeable future than the location of the western campus of the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. So I asked the campus, or the Western Planning Director, Mr. Kevin Baxter, to make a presentation. And I know that you all have heard about what's going on with the school, but maybe not in the detail that he can provide, and to give us a up-to-date report on where everything stands. And so I would like to welcome Kevin here to give us a presentation. And I would also say about Kevin that he is, and he's getting nervous, but he is probably one of the most energetic and enthusiastic individuals and champions that I know for this project. And I can't, honestly, after meeting him and being, having the experience that I have in my career, I can't think of anybody else that would be a more ideal fit and had done a better job than what he has done for this, not only for the school and planning, but what it means to the city of Morganton. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Could I interject just one other point before Mr. Baxter starts, is that when we were doing the 2030 plan as well as our zoning ordinance rewrite, this wasn't even on our horizon. So since that, this is truly an important project we're excited to see come to Morganton. So, Mr. Baxter.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chairman Dickens and Mr. Lookadoo. He's my second favorite member of the Lookadoo household, so he ranks pretty high on my list. We at NCSM, we're really excited, obviously, about this project. We've come a long way, and I suspect, well, I know for a fact that many of you have heard this, some of this information before, but I also know that this is being made available to the citizens of Morganton, so we want to make sure we don't skip over critical details of the project. So if you'll permit me to recap some pieces at the outset, and then give you more of a snapshot of where we are, where we're going, and that would be fresh to everyone in the room and those tuning in to have that update. The pathway to this project, as you all know, began in the public space through the Connect NC bond, which was passed back in 2016. Inside of our institution, School of Science and Math, this really began back in 2010 when we capped out our capacity to bring in new students for residential programming on the Durham campus. And so at that point, with nowhere to grow, we just kept turning away more and more and more qualified applicants to our program from across the state. NCSSM is a 2-year residential program in Durham that's focused on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Also with a very strong humanities division, very strong computer science and engineering division, known around the state and around the world for leading interdisciplinary activity around all of these areas, and partnering with other schools in the UNC system like ourselves. So it's a school unlike any other in our state, and now we'll have a sibling across North Carolina, about 170 miles away. So we are excited to be able to extend the mission of the institution to Morganton and be able to offer this many more spaces to students from across North Carolina who are talented, otherwise would have been admitted but for the lack of capacity within our institution. We also have a robust online program at NCSSM where students actually remain in their home communities, at their home high schools or in a homeschool environment, whatever it may be. And they actually augment their curriculum with courses we deliver virtually from Durham. That will also grow and expand with Morganton coming online in 2 years, and we'll be able to add additional enrollment to that. Currently, it's about 400 students in our online program, all who apply to that program as their first choice. So really, this is going to just continue the expansion of NCSSM over the last 15 years or so, but this will be the most profound expansion in that we're building an entirely new campus for the state and for the UNC system. I've been on this project since January 2017, and when the legislature funded my position, they put a requirement that my position be housed in Morganton. That was the most forward-thinking move that probably could have happened. And I think the reason they did it, as I understand it from some of our legislators, had less to do with thinking there was all this work that had to be done in January 2017 in Morganton, but more to do with the fact they did not want this to just be someone who made a token visit once a month or once every few weeks to this region. Rather, we wanted to scaffold this project from day one of the region, make sure that we were building all the partnerships that made sense, and making sure that we were considering the unique elements to this part of the state. So we were not simply taking the Durham model and dropping it in Morganton saying, we're done, let's open. And so I think what you'll hear as we go through this presentation is we've done just that to this point, and we still have 2 more years before the first students set foot on site in Morganton in 2021. The other piece I'll mention in this kind of quick history is the funding model for this. I mentioned the Connect NC bond, $58 million, a whole heck of a lot of dollars there to build this campus. But when you look at what construction projects require in this state in 2019, it is far more than $58 million for something in the scope that we're tackling. We didn't really know what we didn't know yet back when the bond was passed. It was not a figure that was informed by any advanced planning, nor did we actually have a site. And so once you learn the location after doing the research required, and once you actually build out an advanced plan to project the facility needs and costs, a very different picture and reality emerges. And so we represented to the legislature back in 2017 and 2018 that the need was really closer to 73 to 75 million to be able to replicate the assets available and the amenities available on the Durham campus so that we did not have a less than campus here in Morganton. The market conditions did not do anything but continue to go in the wrong direction from our perspective. And the costs are really up towards closer to 83 to 85 million present day. We are already beginning work on the sites. We've already started to have some bid packages go through. They are higher than we would like to see, but not exorbitantly higher. So we do think that 83 to 85 million number is right-sized. As you may know, we essentially made an arrangement with the legislature wherein they would fund $15 million in additional support to construct the campus. That brought our total to $73 million, and we pledged as an institution to raise every penny beyond that for the construction of the campus. Because we projected back in 2017, this is going to keep growing in need, and we can't just keep going back to the legislature. And so we have been actively fundraising. We'll come back to that later, but that's the genesis of the fundraising campaign for the construction was that arrangement with the state to make sure that we could accomplish this goal on or about August 2021, or as close to that as possible, with supplemental buildings on site. There's a number of defining features. I mentioned the site itself. As you all know, it will be on the School for the Deaf's Eastern Ridge, what historically was the School for the Deaf's Eastern Ridge. They have consolidated operations down to their historic campus, and we have taken over 62 acres, about 22 acres of which is developed in our new campus scheme. And that really is to the north of Western Piedmont Community College and to the east of the School for the Deaf on that specific tract of land. The campus itself is going to serve 300 students residentially. We will have a soft first year in that we will only have 150 students that first year, 2021, 2022. It'll be the first class of juniors to the campus. So we'll still have a little bit of space within which to transfer onto the campus, onboard employees, get facilities operating the way they're supposed to for a full complement. That first class, they may name the school the guinea pigs, the mascot, but we'll see. It's going to be an exciting first year for that class to be able to be the first on site to open it, but it will be a smaller cohort. We are designed and have always been designed in such a way where we have a 50-50 complement of females to male students. And so that will be the expectation from day one in Morganton as well. And the way we control for that, and the reason that's important when you're dealing with minors as we are, who are in high school, is to make sure that the living space is essentially, the female side is walled off from the male side and vice versa. So that's why there's really no adjustment to that 50-50 ratio throughout our operation. We maintain that and preserve that at all costs. The institution itself, we have a chancellor, Todd Roberts. He is in Durham on that campus. We have a board of trustees and a foundation board of directors that operate for the institution overall. And so that governance model will be extended and expanded to be inclusive of Morganton. I report directly to the chancellor, and when the campus is poised to open, the vision would be to have a chief campus officer in Morganton and a chief campus officer in Durham, both of whom are reporting up to the chancellor, who are the proxies of the chancellor to administer program day to day, deal with crises that may be emergent, be the point of contact for town gown relationships, K-12, UNC system, community college system, partnerships and MOUs, all the things that are part and parcel of administering the campus, on top of being a point of contact for everything from HR to IT to all things in between for student life and academic programs. So we'll have a robust workforce, but we will have a point of contact to represent the chancellor in both places, since he clearly cannot be everywhere at the same time. The last point I'll mention here is on this slide is that we will have consistency in our admissions process and our personnel process. And so this will not be administered differently in Morganton than it is present day in Durham and for our online program. What that means is if you were to apply to NCSSM as a student, there's one application for the entire institution. You would complete that. The standards you would be held accountable to as a threshold point to be considered for admission would be the same across all programs and campuses. And at that point, it's up to the student and the family to identify which program they would like to apply to as their first choice. And they can say it's Morganton or bust for me, or top choice Morganton, second choice Durham, third choice online, and I'll take anything I can get. And so the student controls the funnel they will compete in. Our admissions process historically is administered by congressional district. That will remain the same. unless the legislature should change that. And the way that that works is if you're in Morganton and you apply to NCSSM, you're not competing against 1,500 students from across the state. You're only competing for the campus or program you selected against other students who prioritize that campus or program from your congressional district. And so you compete within that space for access and selection into one of our programs. The personnel will be hired consistently. We require a master's degree and expertise in the area of interest and curriculum delivery for our faculty. And so that will remain the case in Morganton. And it is the expectation would be on both campuses that faculty will serve the online program, the residential program, and the residential program across the state from wherever they are through hybrid courses and virtual technology. So we will be serving the whole, but located in one space or the other. So a lot of information on this slide, and this is just to say that really if you go back to 2017 and you fast forward to today, we've had a tremendous amount of people working on this project. And when I say working, that's as volunteers. The city of Morganton, Burke County, everyone from the travel and tourism to the chamber to local businesses have been amazing partners and supporters of this project. They are the individuals alongside others from the UNC system, state agencies, and private foundations and the like, who fill the 4 steering teams we're currently operating. And the reason we have these steering teams is to basically ensure that we are not failing to consider an opportunity at this stage of the game. We went into this with a blank canvas. We brought in the NCSSM flavor in each of these steering teams, but we also brought in external voices so that we can challenge and openly debate the current practice in everything from our facilities operation and management in Durham and what it would look like in Morganton to our curriculum and how does our humanities curriculum, for example, get delivered in any space, inclusive of Morganton. And so we're going through all this because we have the time to do it before opening, and it's a great chance to recalibrate the institution to emerging trends, to opportunities and best practices we find out from our colleagues across the state and around the country. And so that's happening in 4 different domains right now: academic programs, campus operations, student experience, and external engagement. And so we are indebted to those who are serving. One of the key elements that has been uncovered throughout this process is the opportunities surrounding data science. And so as we started the process in 2017, we were trying to understand what are the assets unique to Morganton, Burke County, the Unifor, Western North Carolina, which perhaps the institution does not present day engage with a great deal because of simply proximity being in Durham. And the assumption going into that question is that it's probably going to look different in Morganton, those assets, versus the ones in Durham. No reason not to believe that. And so we commissioned a study back in 2017. We looked at assets in a number of different domains that were relevant to a STEM curriculum. And what emerged was a list, and you see here some emerging pathways. These were areas that were seen as trends in starting new businesses coming to North Carolina, particularly in 8-county area surrounding Burke. It goes out to Buncombe to the west, down to Mecklenburg to the south, and next door to Catawba. So there's 8 different counties we studied. And in these areas, we identified more than 10,000 assets, assets being defined really as a business or industry, a nonprofit, an educational think tank or endeavor, or some natural assets or natural resources in that space. And so we have this wonderful database of all these opportunities, and that has informed a lot of the partnership development we've been working on for the last 2 years. The data science element was actually the 7th emerging pathway. And then about 15 months ago, I think I woke up at 3 a.m. in an airport somewhere, and I just realized data science isn't one of the 7, it's actually the umbrella under which the other 6 connect. Data science is a really neat thing that everyone believes they understand what it means, but we would all probably define it differently. And that's okay. It's an emerging domain in an academic space. You see schools like UNC Charlotte who are out in front nationally to actually develop data science undergraduate degrees and graduate degree programs. You see this happening at Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, MIT, very select institutions around the country. And by a decade from now, the projection is that that will, in a significant way, expand across most campuses who see a connection to that subject matter across the country. We said, what better area to prepare students for, particularly the talented students that we are blessed to work with, then data science. And data science is really not just looking at big data and opportunities to evaluate the way technology is affecting practice in so many different domains, but also what are the ethical considerations and implications of all these advancements we're uncovering every day. And so we are putting this to work in Durham today with a new program that just started on artificial intelligence. It received a $2 million gift from a donor of the school to begin evaluating the technological opportunities available in AI alongside the ethical implications, so these students are immersed in both. It's also a program where we are making all of the curriculum that's developed available open source, so that educators and students around the state and around the globe have access to the content that we're able to build out. So we are excited to be pushing forward in this area and looking for creative partnerships. I'll give you 3 examples here. Advanced manufacturing. We've talked to folks ranging from Leviton to Continental to Molded Fiberglass, to give examples in our community. Educational programs at Western Piedmont, the School for the Deaf. There's tremendous enthusiasm around what's already in place here and how we might be able to contribute to that ecosystem with a program we build out. If you think about financial technology, there's a number of large banks in this part of the state, particularly if you go down to Charlotte and over to Winston, and we are seeing a lot of resonance around the idea of aligning interests and students around what's going on behind the scenes. And you could think about cybersecurity, you could think about any number of things, Bitcoin, all the things that are we talk about or we ask our kids about because we don't know what they mean. These are the things we're trying to get out in front of, and we're trying to take advantage of the time we have to work with. And then the third one I'll mention is climate science, and that's one, especially out in Asheville. We are an internationally recognized hub in Asheville for the climate science work and study that's going on. NOAA, our federal agency, has a space in Asheville, where they currently and for some time now have been storing the climate data from the U.S. All the historic data is there. NC State administers the Institute for Climate Studies in a sister facility there. And they are really excited about the idea of working with our students, our faculty, everything from research to climate capture to evaluating where we're headed and being able to do so in an immersive learning laboratory like the 800 acres we have here in Morganton. So very excited about the direction of this and more to come over the next year and a half as we finalize that scope. And then I'll shift over to the construction side. This is a picture we cleaned up for you of the inside of one of our fine buildings present day. And we are really excited because with the state's support to expand the scope of this project to the $73 million number, we were able to really capture nearly all of the elements of our master plan, all but one, and I'll touch on that in a moment. This will include 2 new buildings, a residence hall complex and the academic commons, and then adaptive reuse of 4 historic buildings on that site at the what was formerly the School for the Deaf, and that's Goodwin Hall, Joyner Hall, Jeter Hall, and the Cattle Barn. Those are 4 buildings that are not in great shape on the inside, but they are in pretty good shape on the outside. We've had our team at Belk Architecture, who did the American Tobacco campus refresh, an adaptive reuse plan. They have gone through every nook and cranny of every building on that site and certified what had the guts inside to make sure that we could count on it for decades to come. We are still spending a lot of money to modernize these facilities, everything from really the bricks will stay. The bricks will stay, and the floor plan, as best we can preserve it, will stay in each of those 4 spaces. Beyond that, we're having to really do everything we can to bring it up to code and modernize it. The site itself will have a lot of activity that goes on, and then the Wellness Center, this is the last piece of the plan that was not in the state funding. And it was not the state's doing that it was outside the $73 million figure. That was our choice. We knew we didn't have enough, and rather than scale back every element of the campus and really take away programmatic space that we thought was otherwise needed, we said, let's have enough confidence in ourselves and in the region and the state that we can find that funding over the next 2 years while we're starting construction on the project. We have started down that path. We have, as I mentioned, have had about a $10 million assumed goal. We've raised $7.1 million in a year. We're really inspired and excited by that. That is, without question, the largest, most productive year in the history of the institution for any project. That's more than we've raised in any year in the history of the institution for anything. And that's 7.1 on top of what they've been able to raise for programs in Durham. So we're really excited. We know we're going to be in a place by this time next year where that scope is fully embedded in our construction, and we're already breaking ground on it. So that's coming soon, but it is very much in the scheme. When you think about the site itself, you all know this part of the state better than I, and you can see in a zoom in that we're talking about a campus that really runs north to south. To orient you, north is to the top of this map, and you can see the buildings on our campus. There is the one that is somewhat transparent at the top. That one is the Wellness Center, and because it is not yet in the scope of the project with the State Construction Office, we have not actually darkened the structure yet on our map. But it's coming soon, and you can see that we've also represented what we hope is emergent in the months and years ahead as a future greenway and a future lake, and that was an element called out really in the Reimagining Broughton study that we have been fortunate enough to be at table for the last 2 years, and we've been trying to help the city, the county, and others, the community college, in thinking through how to creatively generate support to be able to fund the necessary adjustments needed to that space, and to be able to grow out the community college curriculum that would be affected, and so on and so forth. So we do have it represented on the map. The Wellness Center sketch you see here, it's about a 26,000 square foot facility. It would house the health clinic, counseling department, recreation programs, athletic training, and so on. This is just now advancing from from advanced planning to schematic design. And the reason that it is just now moving is because, as you all likely know, we were thrilled to announce a $5 million commitment from Carolina's healthcare system, Blue Ridge, at our groundbreaking event in late June. That commitment allows us to begin work to get the State Construction Office to permit us to move forward with that project as a shell building right now, as we continue to raise the funds to build out the program. Here's a vision of the campus once completed. The Wellness Center is in the top left of this picture. To the right of it is Goodwin Hall, which is a pre-existing facility. The Commons building is in the center left of the picture. Across from it on the right, adjacent to Goodwin, is Joyner Hall, and then below that is the Residence Hall complex. Not in the picture is the barn, which is just below the bottom of this picture, and Jeter Hall, which is there as well. You can see here we are preparing for groundbreaking on June 21st. Even my kids were stuffing packets. Everybody was working hard, and we were really excited to have a really special event out on the site. It was probably the best weather we've ever had on a June 21st. We were very lucky, and it was really a wonderful celebration. And here are some shots from that day. And I think Chad has a video queued up to play, which I timed specifically to release today so that you all would be the first public space to see it. So there's a little treat that Bill hasn't seen this one before. So Chad, can you fire that up?
We're in the final preparations here for our groundbreaking event, which is going to be a massive experience here on the NCSSM Morganton site. Behind me, you can see the tents are starting to go up, the dirt's been laid, and we are expecting about 600 of our closest friends from all over the state coming to join us to celebrate, commemorate this special occasion. Tremendous amount of work's gone into it, and we're looking forward to a beautiful summer day tomorrow.
I'm really excited to be here at the groundbreaking for the new campus in Morganton. One of the most formative things for me growing up and academically was my time at the North Carolina School of Science and Math. I'm thrilled to see the capacity for the school now increasing so significantly with this new campus. So excited to be here, excited for this event, and excited to see the future of what science and math can do. Another first, not only the first public state school focused on STEM, now the first with 2 campuses, so very excited.
We're going to have room for another 150 kids a year to enjoy science and math, to challenge themselves, to learn, to grow and doing it in an environment of their peers and people who are going to really help them become better.
I want to again welcome you to the official groundbreaking ceremony here for NCSSM Morganton. What a momentous day this is for not only NCSSM and the Unifor region in western North Carolina, but the state as a whole. Not every day that we open a new campus of the university system in North Carolina, and so I think we need to recognize the symbolic and important nature of this event for our state as a whole.
Thank you for those of you who played such an important role in bringing this institution here. The Unifor area is the largest MSA in North Carolina, not yet served by the university. And today we're correcting that with help from all of you, and we're grateful for that. For generations, thank you.
I believe success in education comes when the entire community, business, industry, and community leaders engage and are not mere partners, but take ownership of education. And let me tell you, the folks here in Morganton own this campus, and you are role models for the rest of our state.
These key business and community leaders champion the opportunity to expand the growing intellectual capital and the economic mobility in Western North Carolina.
I just could not be more proud of this school and more proud of these students for the work that they put out and the way that they impact our communities. And I couldn't be more proud of the state of North Carolina for investing in this campus in Western North Carolina, because as you said, Chairman Looney, this is a game changer for this community. It's a game changer for this part of the state, but it's a game changer for our students as well.
The state has been a tremendous supporter through the Connect NC bond and beyond, and we had a $10 million gap between what we had and what we needed to have to build the campus. And so we've had a number of supporters that have stepped up, individuals and corporations and foundations.
We have just made a significant donation to the School of Science and Math for the Western North Carolina campus, on which we broke ground today.
Chancellor Roberts, on behalf of the Blue Ridge Healthcare Board of Directors, the management team, the medical staff, the employees, and indeed the residents and patients that we serve, we would like to make this donation of $5 million to the Western North Carolina campus of the North Carolina School of Science and Math.
Today, we made a $5 million donation to the North Carolina School of Science and Math. We did this because we are the healthcare provider for our community, and we know that bringing the school to Burke County will be a good thing for all of us, for our economy, for our health, and for our future.
The Golden Leaf Foundation has recently provided a $465,000 gift to this campus and this project to support the fiber infrastructure of the campus.
The Golden Leaf was pleased to be a partner in this tremendous project to grant $465,000 for connectivity for not only this campus but hopefully beyond. And we appreciate the opportunity to put this in the western part of the state particularly. Even though this will be regionally, it will have an impact statewide. And as a citizen and resident of Catawba County, adjoining county, I was also pleased to see this in our neighboring county, this tremendous project.
Education is super important to us as a company. It's super important to me as an individual. My mother was a teacher. My father was an engineer. Education is important. It's important to grow our community, to grow our youngsters, and we look forward to hiring some of the people from this organization as we go forward.
We've recently made an investment of $250,000 for an endowment at the North Carolina School of Science and Math Morganton campus, and we hope that those investments are comparable to the Durham site, and they too keep immersive mentorship and enrichment in place for years to come.
The BB&T Foundation, we donated $100,000. That's a big deal, you know, and we felt like it was well warranted for the School of Science and Math and what they do here in the area and statewide.
Cutting-edge research will happen here. Research that will lead to better economic growth, not just for this state, but for the region. Intellectual property, new ideas, innovations, even artificial intelligence will transform lives here and will make an impact far beyond the classrooms that these students sit in and work in.
All that is going to happen is not just in classrooms and laboratories, Partnerships with other local schools will ensure that the best teaching practices are shared. Collaboration with local industries will provide students with essential learning opportunities. And collaboration with the Department of Commerce and other parts of the state government will help ensure that this new campus will contribute to the region's growing significance as a destination for commerce and tourism.
The vision of the future is part of Hometown Strong. This vision has been made real today by the first steps taken by the School of Science and Math.
Our NCSSM Morganton team is 2 full-time individuals and 2 temporary employees. We have a remarkably committed group of 4, but we have an even more committed group who support us from the Durham campus that it numbers more than 225 individuals, many of whom are here today. We cannot do this on our own, whether you consider us a group of 4 or a group of 230. And the only way we pulled off this event and the only way we've gotten this far is because of the incredible hospitality, kindness, and support of our partners throughout this region.
The NCSSM founders envisioned the NCSSM experience as one of many different opportunities. And our expansion into online and now to Morganton and Western North Carolina underscores that there are truly no boundaries placed on our educational mission and impact. And this would not be possible without the support of everyone here today. We have much more critical work ahead of us in constructing the campus, securing the necessary operating funding for the school over the next 2 biennium budgets, hiring and onboarding new personnel beginning this fall. We'll have 100 people here working in Morganton on this campus once we're fully operational in 22-23. We'll begin to recruit and select the first class of students in 2020, 2021, and welcome the first class of NCSSM Morganton to the campus in August of 21. As the old adage says, it takes a village, and we have one heck of a village here supporting this institution.
So you know, we can toggle off of that and switch back to that handsome devil right there. Let me point out 3 pieces, or call out 3 pieces that you just heard on that episode, which I think are relevant to your exploration of this topic tonight. One is the commitment you heard from the Golden Leaf Foundation. That commitment and the framing of that proposal was not just to provide fiber infrastructure for NCSSM. We actually approached Golden Leaf with a request that they enable the fiber to be run off the trunk line for MCNC, which runs along Fleming, and bring it onto our site. That was going to be a need at some point regardless. And as the contracted provider to the UNC system, K-12, and the community college system, MCNC would be the ones to do it. Well, we went with MCNC and we really tried to evaluate how do we leverage this opportunity for the betterment of more than just our campus. And so we actually worked pretty hard with a number of different organizations of the state and locally to try to site a fiber hut that would essentially be as far away from our space as possible, but still on our site, so that we could pursue it with our funding model and our construction project. And so we have located that to the southeast of Jeter Hall, which is really the closest space you can get on our campus to the center of the 800 acres. And the reason we did that was because of the idea of when you get the fiber run all the way to there, it's really opportune to, first of all, hardwire Western Piedmont Community College and the School for the Deaf and not have to worry about last mile connectivity and any repairs, maintenance, and upgrades needed for that along the next several years and decades. Secondarily, as you think about the Reimagining Broughton plan and possibilities of bringing industry or economic impact activities onto that other parts of the 800 acres, for us to have the fiber run to that point will really be an opportunity to leverage with some of those parcels. Because it will be less infrastructure required on the front end. Just as you think about water or sewer, I think fiber is a utility now too in the eyes of many or most. And so we really hope that this does seed further seed that economic development activity going on. And we had letters of support from all manner of folks from the community college and the city, the county, Burke Development, and so on and so forth. So we're really excited that they were able to provide that support, and that is exactly how we're going to approach this particular need for for our campus here in Morganton. The second piece I want to call out that we just saw was what you heard from President Roper as it related to the things going on in the community around the campus. Indeed, we have strong visions that are still getting definition around ways we can link up with Western Piedmont, with School for the Deaf, but with Burke County Public Schools, with neighboring counties, with other educational enrichment experiences that are either already in place in the Unifor or potentially coming to the Unifor in the next few years. And so we really are trying to leverage and amplify this moment where we can try to bring folks together. We're not the heroes. We want to just be part of an ecosystem, and we are fortunate because we're outside of those other agencies that we can be a new voice and try to facilitate and engage alongside of those other partners. And so I can't tell you enough about how warm the response has been and the enthusiasm from all the individuals, the agencies I just referenced. And so that is something by day one we already hope to have some definition around when students are showing up on site. That does extend to professional development. It's not all thinking about students in high school or students approaching high school age. A lot of this touches the educators themselves and opportunities for professional development and exchange programs and research activities and all manner of things. And so we're just really excited, and we're excited that the response at the groundbreaking blew our minds. Blew our budget too, but that's okay. We had to keep building a bigger tent, but it was a great problem to have that there was that sort of interest coming from around the state and across the country. You see a slide up here now about the personnel, and Chancellor Roberts mentioned in the piece 100 workforce of approximately 100 employees. Our hope had been to already be in the process of pushing positions forward for hiring for Morganton. The state legislature in their deliberations at the House and Senate this spring and summer, approved the NCSSM Morganton budget request largely as written. And so we were poised with that budget submission to be able to immediately roll out 14 positions full-time in Morganton and begin the process of recruitment and search processes. You all know that the state budget has not yet been approved by the executive branch and the legislative branch, and so we are, alongside of our friends around the state, still waiting for that. And we are in a unfortunate and challenging position in that this is new recurring dollars to our institution for these positions. So while it may look like business as usual for the Durham program today because they have the same approach that the rest of the state agencies do, we have no new recurring dollars or lines, importantly, to be able to initiate a search. And so we are doing the best we can right now, and we're getting by. But I will tell you, if it gets to be fall, late fall, winter, we don't have a budget yet, there are very real implications to our planning process with that. Our legislative delegation understands that. We've communicated that to them. And the governor's office, we've also communicated this to. But just to be totally transparent with you all, we are ready to go. We are ready to start those search processes. These are national searches. People from Morganton can actually absolutely apply for these positions, but as can people at NCSSM in Durham. But it's an open search process, so we will look for the most qualified candidate no matter where they may be. And this is the beginnings of what we expect will be additional interest in potential relocation in Morganton from outside the community. That's a great opportunity and also a different challenge we need to confront when you think about housing and everything else. And so you can see here that we have some leadership roles that we're looking to fill, as well as some program support roles. And then, I mean, within 10 to 12 months, we're looking to fill an additional 38 positions that are everything from middle management to a couple additional leadership roles to administrative back-end type support across the institution. So in about 14 to 15 months' time, if we have the budget to work with, we should have more than 50 employees on site in Morganton, which is a very quick transition. We've said it's coming all this time, but it's actually about to come in reality. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the community college. Bill Lennon's here as a member of their board of trustees, and Dr. Helmick and that team has been
phenomenally supportive of us and is continuing to house our growing operation on their campus until we have a home of our own. And so I do want to acknowledge they're doing that because of this, in the spirit of partnership and collaboration, and to seed those future engagements between our institutions. And then really, last couple slides here just to say what's coming up. It used to not have that little tilde thing in front of summer 2019, but I've added that today because we don't know when that approval is coming for the biennium budget. And obviously, some things are predicated on it, but once we have that, we will initiate recruitment and search processes. We have our NCSSM Takeover of Morganton, our annual event, happening this late September. And so my thanks to the City of Morganton team, because someone had the audacity to plan a wedding at the community house on Friday the 27th before I got my date in. So we could not have our trustees meeting there as we have the last 2 years. And so our wonderful city staff has volunteered their own building here for our Board of Trustees to conduct their business that day. And so we are deeply appreciative of that support, and we will have our foundation board of directors for the first time in their history meet outside of Durham. They were jealous, frankly, of the Board of Trustees and said, we want to go to Morganton too. And so they are now, this is a pilot for them, but if it goes as I think it will, they will probably make it an annual occurrence as well. These folks fly in from China, from London, from around the country, and from within our state for these meetings. And so yet again, we're bringing more and more people into the community to showcase it. And as part of that, we do have an event at Hidden Hill that evening of Thursday the 26th. That's not public yet. I guess it is now. But we are actually doing our annual community celebration at Hidden Hill this year. And so we will be pushing out invitations to that in the next 2 weeks. It's a wonderful chance to bring together elected officials and friends of the institution and partners and all the folks who've contributed their time and energy and teams to the cause, just for an opportunity for us to say thank you. And our Board of Trustees members and Foundation Board and institutional governance governance staff are there. The last piece I'll mention here is what's happening in 2020. We are trying to be very thoughtful about what happens and when, and sequencing it so that we have the infrastructure in place. We will begin onboarding new employees to Morganton across all divisions of our institution. We'll be transitioning office space at Western Piedmont into the bottom floor of Pfeiffer Hall. We actually are deep into thinking about prospective student recruitment. Next fall, students will begin applying to Morganton. So it's getting real. And so we are trying to spend some time over the spring to really assess statewide where there's interest for the campus, where there's not, what people's perhaps preconceived notions are about the institution, about Morganton, about the campus we'll have in Morganton, to give us some intel that we can use in our recruitment process so that we're really out in front in responding to those questions, concerns, misconceptions, whatever it may be. We're also using it to try to confront the exact same thing for Durham. There are many, many, many families that we've heard anecdotally won't send their students to Durham because it's Durham. It's a they're thinking of Durham of 1972. Durham's come a long way, and it's a vibrant part of the community where our campus is located, and many don't know that. And so we're really looking at it institution-wide with that in mind. And then we're really trying to take the next step as it relates to partnerships. So we will begin formalizing MOUs and really articulating partnerships in specific with these partners, like the educational partners I mentioned, folks like Leviton or Biltmore, or folks around the western part of the state that really want to host students at their sites for internships and research. It will become less conceptual and much more pragmatic in the approach we take with those partners as we transition to next year, so that we have that infrastructure in place so we can just rock and roll once we have the students on site in 2021. And then lastly, we will begin the process of formalizing those contracts. Some of these may very well be local or regional. Some may be national or international. In the case of, say, dining services, that can be any firm that competes in the educational space. And so we'll be initiating those efforts. You saw the video. We got a lot more on our website. We are actively continuing our fundraising campaign and our fundraising campaign, and we try to do everything we can to keep those interested in the project informed.
So if you have not been kept up to date, then I would apologize for that, because I would be the one to take ownership of it. And I'd let you know, we do have a newsletter. If we don't have you on it, please make sure you follow up with me so we can get you on it. We put information out once a month to give you an update on where the planning's going, and to showcase things like our Road to Morganton episodes and forthcoming events and activities. So with that, I will catch my breath and look over to the chair and Mr. Lookadoo if there's an interesting questions or if you need to move on with your agenda.
Well, thank you, Mr. Baxter. I just want to thank you so much for a very exhaustive presentation. Certainly, I'm amazed that your brain just doesn't explode, but with so much information. Anyhow, you mentioned a website. Could you give us what that is, please?
Yes, indeed, and it's on this, it's not there anymore. The last slide here has it, which I'm going to share with Ms. Kane, and that's ncssm.edu/Morganton Campus. If you don't have the link handy and you're trying to find us and you go to NCSSM's homepage, at the top of that there is a link to get to the Morganton area of the website. And we try to keep that fresh with all the activities going on, and also, honestly, all the reports that are written behind the scenes by these steering teams, the next wave of which will be in the next few months. They will be posted to the website as well for anyone who's interested to read up on the project, where we're headed, and to share questions, concerns, ideas, and so on.
Thank you. Is there any member of the commission have a question for Mr. Baxter?
Will this video be posted for us to be able to share it?
Yes.
Okay.
So it went up today on our YouTube channel, and it is on our social media. It should be on our social media by now. And we shared it with the city and the county and some other community college and others to help us amplify it through their channels, which they're always kind to do. And so it is definitely out there right now. And in this presentation, I don't know if Jackie's going to be sharing it with all of you, but I've definitely shared it with her already. And the video is embedded in this presentation on the groundbreaking slide.
That's an amazing video.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Other than, what is the major significant difference between Morganton and Durham, other than the newness of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's obviously a fluid process, so those are still being identified and uncovered. But I can tell you, from where we stand today, there's an assumption that the curriculum will be far more inclusive of environmental science programming, based on the assets we have in this part of the state. That there will be, again, the data science spaces will be much more built out here than they are present day in Durham. There are, the entire approach to our curriculum through our planning process has yielded a vision of interdisciplinarity being a focal point. And so we're not trying to keep this siloed like every educational institution you'll ever come across, where humanities may not work ever with computer science or something to that degree. We want to make sure that this campus, because we have the opportunity here to hire everyone new to it, and they work collaboratively to launch it, that they start from the footing of kind of all for one, and let's break down those barriers, because that's the way the real world works anyway. And so it's really an interesting pilot of sorts. And to further that, and what makes me the least popular person in Durham, we are not going to have office space for individual employees, myself included. And so we will have co-working space for all of our employees. We'll have what we're calling touchdown spaces, where faculty and or staff would have exclusive access in larger numbers to have an area of the space to work in, like you'd find in an airport or a WeWork facility in Durham or somewhere else. And so we're doing this, again, to try to establish a culture from the word go, where this isn't your space and it's not your space, it is our space. And allow for students and faculty and staff to freely exchange ideas in different parts of the campus, not just in classrooms. And so an example of that would be when you think about the cafeteria in Durham. The cafeteria is somewhere where you go in Durham to get your food, and you eat it and you leave as quickly as you can if you ask the students. In Morganton, we are trying to make it feel like a student union, somewhere you can sit, camp out, work, have group meetings, have advisor meetings, and not just students, but also the workforce. And so we're trying to approach every area we can to the extent possible. There's select areas like counseling that will have protected space because of the nature of their individual conversations with students needing to be confidential, but those are few and far between. And so we're really trying to benefit from the legacy of the last 40 years in Durham and try to address kind of the scar tissue that's built up there, because they were forced to grow over time in a facility that didn't grow by the same measure. And so they kept having to absorb spaces for different things, and they lost some of the common areas, the kind of the collision areas, as they say, where students come together and exchange ideas and brainstorm. We don't want this just to be in their dorm room or in their classroom. We want to make it campus-wide. So that's a big difference. And then the other one I would say is, if you go to our Durham campus, it's interesting, as a student, you could get nearly anywhere on the campus without going outdoors, even though it's like 7 different buildings. There's tunnels, there's breezeways. It was an old hospital campus, and so the infrastructure was already there. We are taking the exact opposite approach, where you have to leave your building multiple times a day to go to where you eat. That's different from where you might go to your class, which is different from where you might go to work out. And so it would be a crime on that piece of land in this community to not push students outdoors. And so we are taking full advantage of the landscape to do just that. So it'll feel different as a campus, not better or worse, just different than the Durham campus.
What would you say the ideal community around the school would be?
And
as far as business and whatever.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I've talked to a number of alumni who were in their first few classes in Durham, and they talk about, first of all, the campus was absolutely not ready for opening when they opened it in 1980. Different requirements back then. They could have an active construction site with students living in the room next door. There was no workout space. There was no gym to speak of. There was no fields, green space, anything. It was very limiting, and there was some condemned buildings on their campus. And so I said, well, did you go downtown much to Durham? I said, oh yeah, but you had to go down certain streets at certain hours. It was not somewhere our parents wanted us going, but they couldn't track us yet on cell phones. And so it was not as opportune as Morganton present day. Or Durham present day. Durham's come a long way, but what we've seen over that time, the school has seeded an impact around it. We can't take sole credit because on the other side of the downtown area is Duke. And so we certainly are a smaller player as an institution than Duke is, but we're relevant for sure, and we generate a lot of business to that part of downtown. I suspect the same will be true here. We are already we've been in active discussions with the city, with Greenway Transportation, with economic development and so on, about what we see as either obstacles or sensitivities. I think the College Street redevelopment plan, it wasn't solely informed by this, but certainly back in 2017, Sally Sandy was on our steering team, and she was already kind of going through the thinking in her head of, well, if that's where the campus is going to be, how are they going to get downtown? And so it was very relevant to that organic process in the city. Similarly, if you think about Morganton Heights, that's really close to our campus. You can get there quicker than downtown from the campus, but you can't actually get there without a car or a bus today in a way that we wouldn't say you're not walking there on that sidewalk, where it doesn't exist in certain spaces and things like that. So the DOT improvements, I think, that are scheduled for 2020-something at Berkmont and Fleming, that'll be a huge help to making sure students can access commerce there, alongside of being able to access it downtown. Greenway is engaged around how does that pilot shuttle route potentially evolve, or at least exhibit some sensitivity to the needs of the students on this campus who, again, will not have personal vehicles by policy. You're welcome. And so, we need to continue those conversations, and I guess where this all lands is those outcomes dictate what becomes their immediate community, right? Because if there is a barrier in place where from a safety perspective or from a distance perspective or whatever it may be, it's not proximate enough, then Mountain Burrito is as far as they may go, which is, Brian's excited about that, but it is something that we're thoughtful about. And so the development of property along Fleming is an opportunity because there are some lots there that are flourishing and some that are not. And so to have a ready-made population that can walk off campus, employees and students numbering 400 people when we have our second class come on, that's a significant new source of capital. And so I think that's an opportunity. I have no real concerns to share with you because the conversations have been very productive and positive to this point with the city and the Greenway in particular, as they have the greatest stake in enabling some of this, or at least the greatest ownership of what we need to have enabled. And so we're trying to do whatever we can to be supportive of them, and I think vice versa in those cases. Does that answer your question?
It sure did. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there anyone else?
Kevin, just a couple of things.
Yes.
We're talking about 300 students through that. Is there any particular limitation? We've got 50-some-odd acres out there that we're investing in building on about 20, is that right? 22, so something like that?
Right.
Is there anything foreseen that limits us as far as enrollment to 600 or 700 like Durham is way out there?
Yeah, so when we did that's a great question. When we did the master plan in 2017, we actually built out 2 phases. Everything we're talking about today is really phase 1. I should preface this by saying the state only asked us to look at phase 1. We took it upon ourselves to say, well, this is what happened in Durham. They said 300 there and it became 680. So let's try to be at least a little forward thinking here in case that eventuality comes to pass that we're told to grow. And so we did design the campus with our architect team with expansion considered. And so the immediate impact would be, in our minds, we framed it as doubling enrollment. So we looked at how would we grow to serve 600 total, and do it in a way that is contributing to the design and function of the campus. So some spaces like the kitchen in our cafeteria space has actually been designed to serve 600. Not to seat that many people in the dining area, but in the back of the house to have the equipment that can handle it, so that we did not have to lose or duplicate cost if that time came to bring in a whole nother facility for the kitchen. That would be a huge redundancy, right? And so things like that we have built in present day scheme. Most of it, though, would all be new facilities, and they would extend north from Goodwin. And so if you think about how the campus is oriented, if you were standing in front of Goodwin looking at it, you turn to the left, which is north towards Table Rock, you just keep walking up the spine, and we would have another 300 bed residence hall constructed, another classroom building, and potentially an auditorium that would serve 750 or so. And the reason for that is because the barn is our auditorium, but that barn is being designed with a stretch capacity of 460. So we know we can do our all-school programming there, assemblies and trainings and everything else. If we get to 600, we have nowhere to put the student body on our campus, and we don't want it to be comma-sized because we have that mile and a half away that we can access alongside of everyone else. So it would just need to be somewhere that we could kind of bring folks together. So that would be an element in the consideration in particular that the barn would still be there, but something that can handle a larger group. So those are the main facilities. That's still in that only really stretches it about 5 more acres. And so, you've got more than half the acreage still available. At that point, we could absolutely entertain if we were told to tripling or quadrupling the enrollment. But that would require a bit of a rethink about how do we build that out based specifically on the topography at play, because not all of those 62 acres are really developable. And it would have to be really probably focused in a way that would take away from the design scheme we're applying today. So that would be more of a challenge, but one we would have the land to confront. It's just not in our scheme today.
Just a couple of quick follow-ups.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us kind of know what's happening with the main access move, but you might cover that and as far as the access roads.
Oh, yes.
To that,
Yes.
and also there's a whole dynamic that you've kind of addressed a little bit as to the impact of student life for the students, and also how that ties to the city structures as well. But there's also a dynamic, I believe, is with the online learning. I think I'd heard at one time that there is periodic requirement that they come to campus. Is that correct? And the impact that has on our city as far as, well, hotel structure and housing and for faculty and everything else is, might quickly address, but
Absolutely. So on the first point, there will be an access road. You actually begin to see activity on that in the next few weeks because that's in the early site work package that we've finalized. And that is going to connect the pre-existing School for the Deaf entry road that connects down to Fleming. There will be a circle installed really to the east of the chapel and the old superintendent's house, really on the property line of the two campuses. And that circle will allow for the pre-existing roadway to continue to operate as it has to get over to the School for the Deaf or out in that fashion. But on the southern side of that circle will be a new road that comes down essentially on the property line between the School for the Deaf and NCSSM, and it will run alongside the green space by the barn, and then it will go down past the barn. So this is the Berkmont side of the barn. And then it will wind around the watershed and the protected space almost as far as the track at the School for the Deaf, and then run alongside Berkmont down the slope. You won't even be able to see the road from Berkmont because of the topography. And then it will hit a circle just east of Hopewell Road intersection and Berkmont. And so a new entry point will be added to that Hopewell intersection that will allow folks onto the campus. But the other piece of that circle that's right there by Hopewell is it will continue a road on to connect to Community College Drive to the west of the tennis courts. And so this is a multifaceted project which is originated for tons of reasons, not the least of which is it really comes down to safety and security as the priority. Campuses, as a rule of thumb, should absolutely have 2 points of access, educational campuses, and that's something Western Piedmont has long desired. This provides that for them, and so that's why that spine keeps going. That's the priority reason. The secondary value of it is to promote connectivity between our institutions. As it relates to our campus, if we introduced 100 workforce members to that 20% grade road down to Fleming, the stacking issue, the safety issue to cross that road, there's already challenges there with the way the sun's coming up in the morning and everything else, so that we basically wanted to avoid that at all costs. And DOT did their assessment and supported that, and that was part of the $15 million funding we got from the legislature most recently. That's being accomplished because the School for the Deaf in Western Piedmont have valued the plan as well for their employees and students, and they are the ones providing easement to run the road. That's their land that most of that road's running through, not ours. And so that's an important footnote. On the second point of impact to the community in terms of volume at different points of the year, our schedule is such that we start, move-in day is actually Saturday in Durham. So that's why I got out of there today. I said, good luck, everybody. I'm going back to Morganton. So we are going to have 364 students, I believe, moving onto campus on Saturday. And that's really the junior class moving all in at once. And so move-in day is a big deal. There's a lot of activity and volume, and not just on the campus, but around the community to go shopping for the 100 things you forgot from home and so on and so forth. People will be coming from across the state, so I think a good many may be staying the night prior, the night after, making a weekend out of it, et cetera. That happens in Durham all the time. So that's the start of an academic year. We'll have 150 families for the juniors, 150 for the seniors, so that's a significant impact. When you think about throughout the year, we have athletics teams, we have performing arts, we have academic competitions, all the things that you all might think to yourself, I'm going to go see my student do X in their school. It's not a surprise that the parents think the same about their students at NCSSM. So they descend all the time on Durham for these activities or at other places around the state students are competing. And so that's an ongoing activity throughout the year, weekdays, weeknights, weekends included. And then once a month, we send them all home. And so we have what we call extended weekends, where students would be told to leave on a Thursday to come back on a Sunday, or leave on a Friday, come back on a Monday. So they have 4 days to get home, be with their family, and then come back. When we do that, many times we use those extended weekends to not go dark as a campus, but to then allow our online students to come to campus for a weekend to experience that opportunity to be together with our faculty, with each other, and have some specific programming. And so it's a different subset of 100, 200, 300 students that would be coming in on those occasions. Summertime, we don't go dark. When the students leave in May, we run summer programming almost all summer on the Durham campus. We'll do it here as well. That touches thousands of students because those are sometimes 1 week at a time, people coming in and out from around the world, not only around the state. And those are at many different age points, not just high school. We go down to about 5th grade with that. And then finally, we have commencement, which is a big deal, and it's typically Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to use every power I've got to get it off on Memorial Day weekend by the time we open. But that's when we conclude our school year right now. And we have for the 320 to 370 students a year in Durham, we have more than 4,000 people attend commencement. And so it's really greater than a 10-to-1 participation rate. And so that's a dramatic impact. So if you do the math here, we'll have 1,500 or so people we should expect for that event. And that's usually at about 9 or 10 a.m. On a Friday or Saturday in May. And so you talk about overnight stays, and that will absolutely be a nightmare. No matter how many hotels we bring online, there won't be enough in the immediate vicinity, so that'll just spill over likely to Hickory and Marion and Black Mountain and everywhere else. And so there are some of those activities throughout the year that are going to have an immense impact. We would coordinate with all the parties involved, and we would be working a lot with Western Piedmont Community College. We already have a game plan where major events like commencement, people would park like they did at groundbreaking at the community college and shuttle over to the campus site so that we don't overwhelm that land and ruin it with vehicle parking and things like that.
On the campus itself, you will have a lot of bike paths. We're very good with that downtown Morganton. What about between here? That's got to be tough with Fleming Drive and Workman Avenue. They're dangerous.
That's right. And I know, I don't want to put him on the spot, but I know at one time Philip's team was looking at studying that issue, I think, to some degree alongside of Fleming. I don't know the status of that, forgive me, but there was a potential grant, I think, in play for.
Most of these students would have a bike, I would assume, what they're 16, 17.
Yeah, we expect far more in Morganton to bring bikes than Durham. Many probably, well, what usually happens is a lot of students bring a bike, and then the first extended weekend, a lot of bikes go home. But there's a committed group there that does have them. But to not, I mean, this will be, I think biking is going to be one of the things that attracts students to this campus, frankly. So I think I'd expect a large number to bring bikes with them for sure. Philip, do you have any?
Yeah, just one other quick question. I don't want to, people have others, I'm sure, but could you just speak to the Durham campus, kind of what is the median age of the employee group, or maybe what impact average, I don't know what average, but salary is for instructional type?
Yes. So
like that. Just that relates to housing and that.
Sure. I think it's a very tricky thing because I've had this question a lot about trying to almost figure out what is a general profile we can assume for those kinds of impacts. The difficulty in Durham, people don't necessarily leave the school very often. We retain a tremendous percentage of our employees, and so you've got people that are lifers. Once they got there, they still are there in very large numbers, so it's a skewed population as a result. We have folks, we do our years of service events, and we have folks all the time between 20 and 35 years in large numbers. And so that does skew the data set significantly. We're not quite sure how to address that in this kind of context. What we know is the fact we require the advanced degree for the faculty does push the age out a little bit. I think the way that we, the reward structure for our employees, the package, the benefits, and the salary, and so on, is very competitive. It's very competitive in a K-12 environment, for sure. Pick a district in the state or around the country, and we are exceptionally competitive with that. I think the average faculty, when we did the budget request for the state, we had to put some numbers out there, and so we worked with some sort of median salary assumption for faculty, and I believe it was $63,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken. And that then had benefits on top of it that had to be calculated. But that does get affected by years of service in the state. So we do have a salary scale for faculty. On the staff and administrator side, we'll have folks come in as low as 32, 33,000, as high as 120, 125,000, all along that spectrum, with really probably 35 to 40 faculty, probably 12 to 15 administrative staff, and the balance being more middle management and leadership positions on the campus. So it's all over the map, basically. But the only control we know is that we're going to have that degree requirement for the faculty side.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to Phil for 1 sec to see if I misrepresented anything in my comment just now about the Fleming.
No, so you know that on Monday night, council approved an agreement with the NCDOT for the College Street project, and that's $3.3 million to create a multi-use path from North Green Street to Fleming. And that also then connects to the downtown Greenway connector that connects to the Greenway at Catawba Meadows. And the idea was that we would, at some point in the future, and we're working through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, Greater Hickory Metropolitan Planning Organization, to have a funding source to, the original idea was to take the sidewalk that runs from College Street along Fleming and continue that over to the entrance on Fleming to the School of Science and Math, and where there's already a pedestrian actuated signal. So they would be able to get across there, and then that basically that sidewalk would be widened to a 10-foot wide multi-use path, and that would provide that access to College Street. I would think at some point, although we haven't discussed it specifically, at some point we would look at how to improve Burkemont to provide access to downtown. However, the College Street access provided that access to the existing Greenway and all of our other recreational facilities and whatnot. But then it also, on all the cross streets like Meeting and Concord and all those, gave access to the various areas of downtown. So that was the reason why we looked at College Street.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm going to ask your final question.
Yes, sir.
The global component, is there one in the program with the school, or is there not?
And just so I'm responding to the right question, do you mean in terms of global students from around the globe attending, or more the curriculum that is being
Probably
studied?
both, really.
So we have a statute that really governs the kind of programming we can administer, and the only permission we have to administer programming beyond residents of the state of North Carolina at present is over the summer. And so the only programming you see in Durham and that you would see in Morganton, provided the state doesn't make adjustment to the statute, would be to allow for students to pay for summer programming from outside the state and outside the country to access enrichment experience, camps, accelerator programs, and so on. That would be an extension of what we're doing today in Durham. And I would say it's probably a fair assumption that we would have international programming in the summer months in Morganton, just as we do in Durham. So that piece would likely be a part of the landscape. The curriculum includes, we're actually in the process of shifting in Durham and online to a new academic schedule and calendar over the next year, so that in 2020, 2021 academic year, we will shift from a trimester schedule to a semester schedule. And that may not sound like a big deal, but let me tell you, I'm glad I wasn't there for that presentation. It is involved and very complex, and it is really yielding a number of major benefits. Two I'll speak to. One is that it's allowing for greater collaboration with other K-12, community college, and UNC system schools on a semester-by-semester schedule as opposed to the trimester one we have today. The second one, which speaks more to your question, is that we will have the advent of a new January term, which will be between the two semesters. And so the January term will be replacing what has historically been called mini-term at our school, which was a 2-week period at the end of February. where students would do international experiences as well as experiences around the state, around Durham and so on. We'll now have more time to work with to be able to do more involved experiences, whether they're courses on site that are really one-off courses that are elective type opportunities for students on the campuses, traveling to Australia, China, wherever it may be for learning immersive experiences, or doing things where you could exchange students. The Durham student body would have access to attend the Morganton campus for a few weeks and vice versa, up to a controlled population size, obviously. And so that's the most explicit experience when they leave, they could leave the country for programming, but we do have a humanities division that delivers a lot of what you would expect at a university level for cultural courses, world language courses, and so on and so forth. So it kind of manifests itself in different ways on our campuses.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Just very quickly, your students are not allowed to bring cars, right?
That's correct. They can bring bikes, but they cannot bring cars. And I did not mention something earlier. I'm glad you asked that, so I could get this in there. The reason that this conversation with around Greenway and so on is so important to us is because on the weekends, 3 of the 4 weekends of the month, the students are here, and they have a lot of capacity and flexibility to be able to go out and about, but no car to do so. And that's not necessarily a part of the Greenway schedule right now on the weekends. And so it's a unique element to consider, and it's something we're working through with those folks and others over the next 2 years, because we don't want the students to just hole up on campus. We want to get them out, and we can do that at times in programmatic ways where we have a bus loop go to Asheville for event X. But run-of-the-mill weekend, we want them to be able to go downtown and access everything from the library to a comma event to something at a downtown festival or whatever it may be. So if they don't have a bike, or if it's not good weather, that's really important to have that shuttle connectivity. So we're exploring that.
Anyone else? Well, Mr. Baxter, we really, truly appreciate the details of your experience and the effort you're putting into this. We want to wish you a great deal of success as you're moving forward. We think it's going to be a great project for the city of Morganton.
Thank you so much. Thanks all of you for your support, and never hesitate to have me come back and give you an update if you need one.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've got one other item on our agenda for tonight, and before I turn over to Jesse, I just want to say that much of what Jesse will talk about is where in our planning and zoning ordinance, as always, as we move forward with it, there's always going to be opportunities where we find things that, in my opinion, need to be tweaked and addressed as people have made application for building a project, et cetera. So, Jesse, how would you like to proceed with this? I know there's about 12 different items on here.
Yeah, it's just going to be a pretty brief just overview of the topic, because what I want to remind everyone is in our text amendment procedure 2.2.9, it allows the ordinance allows City Council, Planning and Zoning Commission, and residences to initiate text amendments. So kind of what we need as staff is just a brief review of this list, and then you guys let us know if you would like to initiate this list to bring up to future planning and zoning meetings for hopes of text amendments. This list would not be done in one meeting. That would take pretty good time. You have the time to do all the text amendments at once. So this is just our current list. There could be some additions to it in the future. And like I said, we just need it to be initiated by one of those 3 entities. So what I could do is just go over these topics. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask. If not, it would just be you guys initiating us to do the homework and bring those amendments to you in future meetings.
Okay, anyone have comment or question at this particular juncture? Or Jesse, you want to proceed very quickly?
Yep,
with these?
sure. So I'll just briefly go down this list. If you guys have questions, just let me know at the end. So the first one, and I'm just going through the over the last year and a half, there's been things throughout enforcement that have been kind of head scratchers, like why do we have this, or we should add more to it, or clarify or elaborate on these. So I'm going through it from front to back of the book, from ones we've listed to this date. So the first one is we have the performance points tables to increase density within the city. We don't have a procedure for that in the procedure section of the zoning ordinance, so we would like to add one of those. The next section would be 3.3, and that would be the use table. And we've had a lot of interest in events and banquets to be held at bed and breakfasts within certain districts. So we would like to be able to add that to the use table with conditions.
Conditions?
Yeah,
Like
with-
how many you can have, you can't do it every weekend.
Yeah, a plethora of different conditions to protect, the nature of those areas. There's a possible misprint in the restaurant section of the amendments for conditions. Some of those conditions don't make sense, and I think that it was a misprint on the number. I think that it should be a different condition within the conditions table. And like I said, these would be presented as text amendments at a later date. For accessory structures, we don't have a good definition of what they mean by how big an accessory structure is. They just go by half the size of the square foot of the house. But you can define the square footage of a house in many different ways. So we kind of need to clarify that, because you can have a funny looking yard with a bunch of accessory structures if it's 3 stories high. So we would like to bring that one forward. Several different areas of the landscape ordinance need amending, including street yard section, parking lot yard section, and word clarification to let us better enforce that part of the ordinance. And the planting list needs a little bit of work. For parking, for parking over 125% of the required minimum, we require permeable pavers. However, we don't require, in the text, we don't require the drive aisles to be permeable pavers, which we think makes sense to make those permeable pavers. Since you have to drive on the drive aisles to get to the parking spaces, may as well make those permeable as well. So that would be one coming down the line. Here in Morganton, we've been accustomed over time to allow a sidewalk fee in lieu for required sidewalks in the city. However, the zoning ordinance does not necessarily say it outright that is allowed. So we wanted to bring to the board at a later date whether or not we should allow a sidewalk fee in lieu in place of a development building a sidewalk. So we need to go over that at a later junction. We don't have that written yet.
And I would add too, Jesse, that provision is in the subdivision ordinance for the required sidewalks that are, if you develop a subdivision.
Yep.
That fee in lieu is allowed in the subdivision ordinance. It's just, it wasn't picked up in the zoning ordinance.
Right. And when you, and you guys take this list home, because it does say some of these things in it. There's some other smaller ones, like the allowed feather flag signage for signs that don't require a permit. We've had a lot of complaints that people have a really wide parcel frontage, so they should be able to have more than just one, which we think is, we understand that. So possibly allowing more than one feather flag with a maximum of 2, depending on your road width, your frontage. It's been an enforcement nightmare. We have to go around and tell people to take their second one away all the time, and a lot of places, if you have a wide enough area, it doesn't look that bad, and I think it would meet the intent of the code. And then we go into the non-conforming section, which anyone that's in code enforcement, you know that without a very well-written non-conforming section of the ordinance, it can be an enforceable nightmare. So mainly some more clarification on several subsections of Section 6, some including the way we define discontinuance of non-conforming mobile homes and what we consider what was that? On what we consider a continuously maintained mobile home park. What does continuously maintained mean? We need kind of to define that in the code so we can have some teeth for the enforcement. It's, if you got down to it and we forced some of these and it came to court, we would probably lose some of them just because of the missing clarity in that section. So you've got a couple sections on mobile homes and non-conforming structures just in general. And then another big one lately has been in order to bring certain properties up to conformity with the code, meaning landscaping, parking, building design, the code specifies a certain structure or a certain use. However, it doesn't go into detail on some developments have 3, 4, 5, 10 different tenants in it. So if you change the use of one tenant space, does that constitute the entire parking lot of that area to come into conformity with the code? So we would like to look into other codes and see how other places are doing their change of use in order to bring developments up to conformity. So it's just a little vague. And all these nonconformity sections, it's the vagueness and the missing clarity in the text that we would like to work on. So that's our current list, and like I said, we just need this body or the city council or residents, don't see any here, to allow us to look into those amendments in the future.
Any questions for Jesse? I would propose making a motion that the staff review in detail these proposed 12 amendments and come back probably presenting, I'm thinking 4 per meeting.
Yeah, 3 or 4 per meeting, depending
meeting.
on the size of them. Some of them will be a little more in-depth than others.
With the proposed rewrite or the amendment as suggested for this commission to consider. And I'll make that in the form of a motion, and a second by Waits. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll ask for the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? None. So we'll hopefully take on the first 4 for our next gathering.
September, yep.
Is there anything else that needs to be brought before the commission? Comments, questions? Hearing none, it brings us to the end of our meeting, and I'll call it adjourned.